Joe. I am the events manager here at TNT Knitwear, and we're very excited to have you all here to help celebrate the release of journalist Peyton Cunningham's new book, The New Tourist, Waking Up to the Powers and Perils of Travel. We're really excited to welcome Vinci Ho, the founder and executive director of Rise Travel Institute, and Gabby Beckford, the founder of Paxlight and a travel content creator who are here to lead the conversation Q&A page. An exploration of how tourism has shaped the world and a deeper understanding of the implications of wanderlust. The New Tourist has been called a powerful argument for a new kind of tourism and with it a new way of seeing the world by Sarah Stadola, the author of The Last Resort. A book that is, quote, neither travel guide nor social history, but a thoughtful and deeply researched amalgam covering the symbiosis of traveler and destination and the effects on each other's souls, by Gavin Watson, the author of Road Less Travel, Dispatches from the Ends of the Earth, and an essential reconsideration of the impacts of tourism in our increasingly connected times that only Buchanan could have made so damn entertaining by Thomas Constant, novelist and author of Do Travel Writers Go to Hell, and damn entertaining was in all caps, so means it. An American journalist currently based in France, Peyton Cunninghan is a regular contributor to the New York Times and has reported from more than a dozen countries in publications like The Guardian, the BBC, The Washington Post, and others among many. Her reporting has covered multilateral trade negotiations, humanitarian crises, economic development, and for the past 5 years, the tourism industry. And her travel journalism has been recognized by the Society of American Travel Writers and the North American Travel Journalists Association. She graduated Williams College and Duke University. She's lived in 5 countries since she left the United States in 2008. And it's a pleasure to have her back here in the US and especially in New York. Please help me welcome Peyton Cunninghan, Vinci Ho, and Gabby Beckford.
Good evening, everyone. It's an immense honor to be here to celebrate the launch of Paige's much anticipated book, The New Tourist, Waking Up to the Power and Perils of Travel. This book is a profound exploration of the dual nature of travel, delving into the complexities of modern travel and offering a nuanced perspective that challenges us all to think more deeply about our journeys and more specifically about the impact of our journeys. And I was so fortunate to receive an advanced copy from Paige and found it to be a truly fascinating read. And I can't wait for all of you in the audience to get a copy tonight. And if you don't get a copy tonight, don't leave this door. So Paige, many authors who discuss the impact of travel and tourism, they tend to present a very one-sided view, right? And some highlight tourism as a positive force, emphasizing its economic benefits on countries and its transformative effect on travelers, while others focus on the negative consequences of tourism, such as environmental footprint, gentrification, human and animal exploitations, power imbalances between guests, hosts, and international corporations, and cultural appropriation and erosion, and so on. What inspired you to take a more balanced approach to the subject as the theme of the book, and what initially sparked the idea for the book?
Okay, well, thank you so much, Vinci, for that question. I'm excited to answer it. But before I start, I just want to know, first of all, thank you to everyone for coming, and just to say that I'm sitting here between 2 winners of the Social Impact Award from the Women in Travel Summit. Both Gabby and Vinci have won the same award, and actually Vinci presented Gabby with the most recent award. So I'm really, I hope this will be a really rich and productive discussion among the 3 of us, because yes, I've written this book, and I'm sitting between 2 women who have an enormous amount of experience that has, garnered a lot of recognition already. So anyway, I'm looking forward to this discussion. But yeah, what inspired this? Like you say, I think kind of 2018, 2019. Looking at the world of media around travel and tourism, it was, like you said, I would see a lot of stories that are either kind of like top 10 beaches in Brazil, or like, oh my God, Barcelona's overrun, there's anti-tourist graffiti, don't go, if you want to go to Barcelona, you're bad. And I didn't see a lot of nuance in between, and so it just seemed like a really interesting gap in my journalism. And for a long time, I started off kind of reporting on economic news, and kind of social development and political stuff in West Africa. And I had done travel writing for a while as sort of like a side gig, where it was kind of not I had my sort of serious journalism, and then I would write kind of travel features for the Washington Post sometimes, or for the BBC. And then in 2018, so getting to more like really what inspired this book and my travel journalism more broadly, I moved with my family to a little village in the French Alps, which I write about in the introduction of the book. And it was kind of for lifestyle reasons that we moved there, and we wanted to kind of set up shop there for a while. And I just saw how tourism completely animated this little village. Without tourism, this place would have been a ghost town, probably not long after the end of World War II. And how, in summer, hikers come and mountain bikers, and people want to go whitewater rafting, and in the winter, it's skiers who come. And it gave me an appreciation for the power of tourism to animate a rural community. At the same time, I was a resident of a tourist destination for the first time in my life, and I lived with the everyday challenges of navigating crowds in your sort of local supermarket at certain times of year, and the parking lot's full, and oh, we're late for school, and where do I park to, that would happen sometimes. So I was gaining, moving to this village in 2018, I gained a lot of appreciation for the power and the nuance and the complexities of this phenomenon of tourism, which of course is an industry and so much more than an industry at the same time. And so, I started, this is really what kind of motivated me to write about tourism in a more nuanced way that both acknowledged the power and without ignoring the challenges and the downsides or the things that we need to navigate, be really careful about how we navigate with in tourism.
Thank you. This is such an important publication because, as you said, like most reporting are very one-sided, right? And so just really love your nuanced approach to describing the impact of travel and tourism on places. And so for this project, you interviewed a lot of people, like you went around the world and like did an incredibly extensive research for the book. And could you tell us a little bit about the process of selecting where to go, who to interview, and whose stories to tell?
Well, I could spend a long time answering that question, and I'm looking up at my agent who's laughing because she has been, I mean, how many chapters did we sort of like dream up and then cross off? Like, I can't even tell you. I wrote like 2 complete chapters that did not end up anywhere in the book. So there was a lot of like trial and error, but really I was looking for tourist destinations that people would recognize, that would kind of strike them, that would resonate with people. So going to places like Amsterdam and Hawaii and Barcelona. At the same time, I wanted to go to places that were at different stages in the sort of the life cycle of tourism. Some newer kind of, more up and coming tourist destinations like, excuse me, Liverpool in the north of England, which has really been transformed by tourism over the last couple of decades. As well as, the classic sort of Hawaiis and Amsterdams that have been tourist destinations for a long time. And then in terms of like narrowing down like who I'm going to feature in the book, and I really tried to keep my mind as open as possible. Like when I'm on a reporting trip, whether for a news article or for the book, I just try to go with an open heart and an open mind, and the idea that, okay, I have some advanced knowledge of what I'm getting into, but the story is like, it's there for me to find. It's not already in my head. I need to really be open. And in a couple of cases, I went expecting to be reporting on or writing about this topic, and actually it's like, wow, it's way over here, this story. And I need to, the onus is on me as a journalist and as a writer to stay open to that and not to have a really fixed idea in advance. And then just really connecting with people and meeting people. And I was telling you earlier, there are several times in the reporting for this book where I'm sitting there and I've met someone, I'm talking to them, they're telling me their story, and I literally would get goosebumps, just like a chill kind of down my spine. And I'm like, okay, that's a sign. Like, you're going in the book. Or where I was really, but show that I feel like if this person's story is moving me and touching me and kind of like, I'm having a visceral reaction to this, if I do my job right as a writer, then my reader can have that reaction too. And I can't create that experience if it doesn't exist, but if I have that experience, then it's my job to translate that into prose that will have that effect on my reader. So that's really what I was looking for, that zing of like, this is something important somehow, and it's maybe hard to define, but
well, let me reassure you. When I was reading your advanced copy, I did have goosebumps like multiple times as I was reading it myself.
Very happy to hear that.
Yeah, so hello, welcome.
Hi, yes.
Join us.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the content of your book. You traveled around the world, from Iceland to Saudi Arabia, from Hawaii to Cambodia, etc. And you gathered an array of captivating stories from locals and indigenous peoples too, around the world, and offering an intimate look into the multiple realities and complexities of those places. People's pride, struggles, resilience, and their perspectives on tourism as well. Whether it brings positive changes to their communities or, whether they actually prefer tourism to stay away, from their territories. And I know it's difficult, but if you have to pick one story to share with the audience who haven't yet read your book tonight, what would that be?
Oh my gosh.
One story that has really profoundly moved you.
Yeah, okay, well, I might say two, because I just thought of a second
you're allowed.
one. There was, so I spent some time in Hawaii for the book, which is a place that's very close to my heart. My older sister has lived in Hawaii since 2003, and so I've been out there many times over the years to visit her, not necessarily as a tourist, but of course we do kind of touristy things sometimes. And I spent a long time there reporting for the book the summer of 2022, and spent a long time with a man named Kuike, who's a native Hawaiian man, who I met at a native Hawaiian, at a conference of native Hawaiians, where I went really looking to listen and learn. And he stood up there was this panel about tourism, and at this conference, and 5 people, and all being very kind of tourism, there's some problems with it, but we're working with it, and we're gonna find a better way to do it, and this is kind of the vibe. And then everybody was kind of sitting down like this, and then Kuike comes and he stands up, in his big board shorts and he's talking really loud, and he's like, tourism is how Hawaii was colonized. Tourists need to leave. It was really strong. And I'm sitting in the audience and I'm like, that's my dude, but he was speaking to an audience of 200 people at this conference. It's in the Sheraton Waikiki, and all a really native Hawaiian audience, right? This is a native Hawaiian conference. And the audience, he is like, is this what you want as Native Hawaiians? You want all these tourists bringing trash and destroying our environment? Is this what you want as Native Hawaiians? Tourists need to go home. Mahalo, he said, thank you in Hawaiian. Mahalo for coming to my TED Talk. He sits down and the whole room is holding a collective breath, and then it's standing ovation. Everyone stood up and it was just thunderous applause, and I was like, you're my man. We're gonna hang out. So I walked straight up to him afterwards, and I was like, hi, Kuike, I'm Paige. I'm a journalist. Can we hang out? Nice to meet you. And he was like, yeah, let's come. So a week later, we made arrangements, and I took an Uber out to Waimanalo, outside of Honolulu, 40 minutes outside Honolulu, where he was born and raised, and we spent several hours together. He showed me around his hometown. He took me to Waimanalo Beach Park, which is a nice little it feels kind of like a state park. It's right on the beach, and it's nicely manicured and everything. But you see the nice grass and the sloping white sandy beach and the people on the beach, and then you see over here a line of tents, maybe a couple of dozen tents, which look pretty permanent. And these are homes for Native Hawaiians who can't afford to have houses, And so he wanted to take me here to show me this, and he was like, tourism brings $17 billion to the Hawaiian economy every year. Why are our native people sleeping in tents? This is what tourism has done to Hawaii, right? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, sometimes as journalists, you get people they're looking at your notebook. They're like, write this down. Write this down. He was like, I want you to, I'm like, okay. And this is the man, I'm like, this man's story needs to be shared. Is it does he have all the answers? No, because no one has all the answers. Is his voice important? And is his voice something that is not out in the culture right now? Yeah. Isn't my job? This is my job right now, Paige. Pay attention. This is your job. Get this man's voice to other people. That's my job. So I was sitting there taking my notes, and really he was a super nice guy, and then he was like, all right, come in my camo colored pickup truck and I'll drive you around a little bit. And you gotta be careful, but I was like, I got a good vibe from this guy. Sure. So I get in this pickup truck, and he drives me around and he shows me like the street where an empty lot recently sold for $2.2 million. And he told me about an hour into the conversation, he's like, you know, he's the father of 6 children, 36 years old, does a lot of volunteer work, and at that moment, he had about $100 to his name. And he grew up in extreme poverty right there in Waimanalo. So this was like really moving, and I spent, you know, a lot of time in Hawaii. I hung out with the head of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. I attended this board meeting, which was like kind of wacky, describe it in the book. And then I went to the Big Island and hung out with a Native Hawaiian woman who was doing like really inspiring things. So I don't want to sort of paint a negative picture of Hawaii, but I did include Kuike's voice because this is one voice that really struck me and really and moved me. And I tried to put it in the context of other things that are happening in Hawaii, and without telling the reader, like, you know, should you go to Hawaii or should you not go to Hawaii? Like, you know, I don't know. It's complicated. Am I going to go to Hawaii again? Yeah, like my sister lives there, you know. But like, is it important for me to know this man's opinion and to hear it and to have that in my brain as I'm making my decisions? Yeah, like that, I need that. And so that's what, you know, I don't give a lot of prescriptions in the book, but I'm like really trying to introduce them to people like this whose voices I think we all need to have in our heads.
I'm really grateful for your approach. Actually, for at Rise Travel Institute, that's exactly what we do. We don't want to tell people what to do and what not to do, whether they should travel or not to travel, but really to provide them with more context or like guidance in terms of how they can make better and more thoughtful and more mindful decisions when they travel and understand like more of the context of the local realities, right? And so I really appreciate that approach. And you just said that you have 2 stories to share.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I don't want to go on too long, but the other one is from my trip to Saudi Arabia, which is like the definition of, I've done a lot of travel over the years. I've done a lot of travel by myself. I don't tend to get nervous before trips. Like, I've kind of seen a lot, whenever I feel confident. I was scared to go to Saudi Arabia. My mom is nodding. Yeah, I was nervous, but I knew I had spoken to a lot of academics who were like, Saudi Arabia, you're writing a book about tourism. At this moment in history, you cannot not go to Saudi Arabia right now. This is the most important thing happening in tourism at this moment in time. And my book editor was like, oh, that sounds really intriguing. I checked the flights, I live in Europe. It's like, it was kind of, the prices were reasonable. And I was like, holy Christ, okay, here we go, I buy my flight. And I go on Amazon, I buy a burqa, literally, on Amazon. I started reaching out to friends and friends of friends to be like, have you been to Saudi Arabia? Like, what should I do? And I went and I was like, okay, I'm a solo woman, I'm a journalist. These are not good categories to be in. So I'm like, I'm gonna go just as a tourist, and I'm not gonna request any official interviews, which is like definitely not what I would normally do. I'm just gonna experience it as a tourist and see what happens. And this is one case where I was like, I don't know what the story is gonna be. I had a few inklings, but I was like, I just gotta go with an open mind and see what happens. And in terms of my, that trip, and it was really a whole series of women who I met on that trip, and one of whom features in the book in the final chapter, my tour guide in Riyadh, Fatima, who is amazing and who is, like, I was texting with her a couple of hours ago, really just sort of changed my perspective on this country, which I didn't think I knew that much about, but I really had much stronger, like, preconceived notions about this country than I even realized before I went. And meeting Fatima and other women like her kind of cracked that open. And I'm not going to say it made me think better of the country or it changed my opinion on the country's politics. But it just reminded me of, and I write about this a bit in the book, as an American who has lived overseas for most of my adult life, I've lived overseas since 2008. I've met a number of people over the years who say, oh, Paige, no offense, oh, you're American? Okay, no offense, but like, I would never go to the United States. And I'm like, okay, I get it, and sometimes it's practical, like they don't want to be shot, they don't want to trip on the sidewalk and get a $50,000 hospital bill. Fair enough. There is travel insurance for that, but whatever. But more often it's really political. Like I really disagree with your country's politics and policies on abortion, on gun right, like immigration, race, bipartisan politics, like, Trump, like you name it, right? And I never fight people on these things, but I always kind of hope they might see past their preconceived judgments of my home country, which I see as a beautiful and deeply flawed place that's home to millions of diverse souls, including many of my close friends and family. And so now I see, after my trip to Saudi Arabia, I had such preconceived, it was like a British person, sorry, most of these people are British. I had such preconceived notions about Saudi Arabia that scared me to go. I came away seeing Saudi Arabia as a beautiful, deeply flawed place that's home to millions of diverse souls, including my courageous and fun and just sassy, excuse me, I don't think the word, tour guide Fatima, who took me around for the day in Riyadh and who has become a good friend. And so that was such a gift, and I think the real gift of that experience came from me being ready to scare myself a little bit and get outside my comfort zone. Anyway, so that was the second one.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I truly admire what I truly admire you about you as an author is the humility, you demonstrate throughout the book. I'm really impressed by your willingness to share, to be vulnerable and admit that even after years of professional, being a professional travel writer and journalist, you still, there are still parts of the world that you're unfamiliar with, and you want to, that you are willing to sit with that discomfort and go there and get to know more about those countries, right? And so Saudi Arabia was a perfect example, and I love how you so beautifully put when you talked about how the United States is a deeply flawed and beautiful country.
Like all of us, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also, this country is home to millions of diverse identities, right? And so those are the realities that people don't necessarily see in the news. And I really appreciate that. And we also need to know that politics and culture and people, they're all separate entities, they're separate things, and we cannot just write off an entire country because of who's in power, right? And so what you described, especially in the last chapter, just so eloquently explain that concept. So I really appreciate that. And there's so much worth seeing and learning about place, and we have so much to learn and unlearn as travelers, right? And so so here's the question for you. I believe that no one's open-mindedness comes naturally, and yours likely developed from your upbringing, years of life experience, and also your work as a journalist. Could you share a little bit about your journey as an independent journalist and where comes this immense, admirable humility? And also, tell us a little bit about your journey as a journalist, and some accomplishments that you're proud of, some challenges that you encountered on the way.
Oh, wow. Okay, lots of questions in there. First of all, I don't feel particularly humble at the moment, all the promotion for this book I'm doing. But thank you for that.
We all need a little bit of self-promotion sometimes, and you totally deserve it.
This is really not my normal mode of being, just, for those of you who don't know me. But I'm really motivated to share what the messages in the book. But no, in terms of just I think, my parents obviously modeled a degree of humility and just real respect for humanity and other people that touched me and inspired me from a very young age. And then as anybody who, has spent a lot of time outside their home country, being a foreigner for the last 16 plus years, it forces you to really kind of see yourself, in someone else's home, and maybe have a degree of humility and just respect for the culture around you, and always kind of looking to integrate, to assimilate, it requires a level of sensitivity to one's surroundings that I think has helped me to kind of further refine that, I think. But yeah, I don't know, life as an independent journalist, it's started, I've been doing freelancing for a really long time, and I gotta say, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about my first travel writing gig. I was living in West Africa in Sierra Leone in 2010, from 2010 to 2012, and I had the job of preparing the second edition of the country's only dedicated travel guidebook. So for, I think it took me like 18 months, I traveled all over this West African nation of Sierra Leone, which really has very little tourism infrastructure. But if there was a hotel operator, by God, I found them. And owner of a little fries shop or whatever, they're in the book. And so that experience was really wonderful and really, really a very, a good lesson for me, and the really kind of like the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts of that kind of travel writing, and went on from there to do more freelancing and kind of traditional travel writing stuff too.
So I think thank you so much for sharing that, the journey. I think this just brought us to the last section of our conversation, which is the most important one as well. So here we're gonna have a three-way conversation about what decolonizing travel means. And we have our expert, award-winning travel and lifestyle content creator and co-founder of Black Travel Alliance, Gabby Beckford here. And I'm so glad that you're here, and I just cannot wait for you to join in this conversation. So,
and I have something to say. I wanted to share the story of how, Gabby, who's fantastic, I interviewed Gabby for the book, so she's in the book, and she had got an advance copy, of course. We met for coffee when I was in New York in April. But I wanted to share the story, you don't know this, of how I found you.
Yeah, I don't know.
So as I was doing my asking around of friends before I went to Saudi Arabia, through a guy I've worked with, his daughter is kind of 23, 24, and has lived and worked in Saudi Arabia. And so she was one of the people I spoke to be like, do I need to wear a burqa? Can I eat in the same room as the men at the restaurants? Kind of have this conversation. And I told her about the book, and she was really curious about it. And then she's like, are you going to write about social media and travel? And I was like, yeah, I haven't written that chapter yet, but I'm kind of doing my research. And she was like, please, can you talk to this one travel creator who's just amazing? And I followed her for a long time, and she's just so cool. Her name is Gabby Beckford at Pax Light. And I'm like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll check her out. And I really hadn't, I was in the very early stages of thinking about the chapter on where I talk about social media. And I really wanted to highlight people who are doing it well. I mean, there are plenty of people out there who you can sort of point a finger at and be like, ick, But instead of doing that to other people, as you'll see in the book, I do that to myself. I pick apart something that I posted on social media. I'm a social media nobody, just FYI. But I think about, so that I did that I wasn't particularly proud of in retrospect. And I did that because I wanted to encourage other people to have that level of self-reflection. And so it's if I show that, then it's maybe I'm inviting you to do that. Anyway, but I did want to feature people who are doing it really well. And so I started, based on this young woman, Allie's recommendation, I was going through your content, and I was like, here's an example of a young person, please, doing, thinking about social media and travel in a really thoughtful, constructive, deliberate comes to mind, but maybe way. And then, of course, it seemed that you'd won all these awards, and so I thought, oh my gosh, I want to reach out to Gabby and talk to her and have a book. But anyway, that's,
wow.
Yeah.
The awards are cute, but shout out to Allie.
Allie Bauman. I'll put you, I should
Allie
be recording this for her.
What an endorsement. That's cool. That's what it's all about, is the people, right?
Yeah.
And what people say, so that's cool.
Yeah, but I would love to just ask you to share a little bit about your journey and how you, your ethos with how you share about travel and thinking about all the things, because in the book, I do write about some of the challenges of social media driving, too many, this is, things that we talked about, driving too many people to a certain place at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are pitfalls for you to navigate, as well as huge opportunities for you to kind of put across constructive messaging. So what's your sort of ethos, or what criteria do you live by as you're making your content?
Yeah, so hi, crowd. I'm Gabby Beckford. I'm a creator online, mostly social media. And I got into travel because of my parents. My dad always loved travel. He joined the military to be able to travel. My mom always loved travel. She became a travel agent to be able to travel. And so it's always been kind of a genetic thing. I love travel, but travel wasn't accessible to me, or really any of us, anyone in my family, financially. We had to hustle it. We had to hack it to be able to travel, right? And I was like, I turned 17. I was like, okay, what's my hack going to be? I'm not joining the freaking military, so I can't do 16 push-ups. So how am I going to hack my way into travel? How am I going to make travel accessible to myself? And for me, it was scholarships and now social media. So that was my hack. And so my content really revolves around that I love travel. I think it can change the world for the better. I think it like can help us all evolve as people, and I think once you know someone, it's hard to hate them, like anybody in the world. Once you understand someone truly, that's kind of what your entire book is about to me, is like once you truly see someone, we have more similarities than differences, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm like, okay, how can I get people from A, fear, confusion, like overwhelm, to Saudi? Like, oh, they're just like us. There's moms pushing strollers, and there's kids going to college, and they jump off waterfalls, and you know, the context is whatever, but like there's just people. So that's my ethos about that's always been my ethos around Paxlight. And so I started sharing travel scholarships and grants just to get people on planes, like get young people on planes, especially people that looked like me. And sharing stories about how I would travel solo as like a young black girl to Poland. And people would be like, what the fuck, Poland? I'm like, yeah, Poland. It's not like, let me share my story and tell you how it was. Or Dubai, where I chose to study abroad for a year. And I also went with the same exact misconceptions. People were like, you have to wear a hijab everywhere. Like, you can't even go out in public. And I got there and I was like, how can the truth be so different from people's perceptions? Like, how can this happen with social media? Like, it doesn't really matter. There's so much misinformation. I have to be the one to share my story, to create the content, which is why, I mean, love what you're doing. Love that you chose this topic. Love that you're like sharing this voice, the voice of the voiceless, who need to be heard. So yeah, that's my ethos around Paxlight. And wait, what was the second part?
For how you think about, because this is something that we talked about as well, like, you know, your sense of, I think I remember you giving me an example, like, was it from the Grand Canyon or something, where there was like a particular place that has kind of like, gotten a lot of crowds, and how you like, do you go there? Do you post from there? Do you not post from there? Like, how do you think about making sure that, you know, but just to give you a little sort of context of Gabby, like when we met for a coffee in April, not far from here, we're sitting there chatting, and like at some point, some guy walks up and he's like, excuse me, Gabby Beckford? Hi, I follow you. I run a donut shop down the road. If you ever want to come by, here's my card. Thank you so much. Love what you do. And I was like, oh my God, this is a celebrity.
I was like, this never really happened. And then on the walk home, some other guy was like, excuse me.
Like, so Gabby has a huge reach. Like, she moves people, right? So when you're somebody like a Gabby Beckford, which we all, like, we can all influence our followers on social media. We all have this power, but most of us don't have an audience of several 100,000.
Right.
So when you have that kind of an audience, you know, how do you think about, especially questions of like overcrowding, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, my whole thing around Paxlight is to go, I say, to the second page of Google. For me, I think I have a lot of privilege having traveled so much so early on in life that like when I see someone post a photo in front of the Eiffel Tower, I'm like, that is beautiful. That's an experience everyone deserves to have. Like, that's awesome. I do wish you knew about the thing 2 miles down the road that was just equally as cool. And like, I wish that we found that just as cool. And when I think about like, well, so the example I gave you was like Horseshoe Bend.
Yes.
Has anyone heard of Horseshoe Bend in Arizona, the Grand Canyon? It's like a big curve in the rock, and like the river goes like a big U, and people are like, and there's a big U river behind them. Like, that's it. There's nothing there. It's dirt and dust, and people fall off it every year. But people go there to take photos. And I'm like, is there nowhere else on the Grand Canyon that curves? But people rush there, and they pay, and they park, and they crowd, and there's 16 people in your photo, and I'm like, if I just went 4 miles down the road and got the same picture with like a different corner, like how can I make them care about that? How can I show them that that is just as cool if it's the same exact photo? Because it's not actually the rock. They want to go because everyone else goes. And I'm like, okay, well, how can I like kind of shift their perception to be like, hey guys, it's not really about where everyone else is going that makes travel cool. It's the people. It's the bucket list experiences you can only have in Myanmar that you can't do in Florida. Like, don't go to Mexico to be on the resort that looks like Miami. I promise it just looks like Miami. You can go to Miami. So that's kind of my ethos around like where I share and why is like, you like go anywhere. Like, well, not everywhere maybe. Go with intention. And so if you're just going because it's the first thing that popped up on the first page of Google, and it's the first thing that's like SEO sponsored to show you, and everyone else is going there, maybe just take the extra 10 minutes to be like, what's on the second page? What's nearby? What's also cool? And like, maybe you love history. Like, okay, maybe you don't go to the Grand Canyon U thing. Maybe you go talk to a Native American tribe down the road and learn about history. Like, you can really like, you're the master, you're the artist of your life. Like, you really don't have to just follow the script that everyone else is writing, even me. Just dig in a little bit deeper, and I kind of hope that my content gives them the permission to do that.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it does, and it certainly speaks to Allie Bauman, who can be our sort of little like avatar of your follower, who is just like, I mean, the way she like lit up when she was talking about you, and I think it's easy for me maybe to forget because I've like traveled so much and lived overseas for so long that like I know how to like book a flight and how to make it a little bit more affordable and the ins and outs of like navigating, but the practicalities of travel, but really helping open up those possibilities to people who maybe didn't grow up having those experiences.
Right.
I think is really really cool. But now I would just like, so I'm now playing moderator here. Back up. I'm sorry. Sorry. Well, I would love to kind of like slide back a little bit and encourage like the two of you guys, because this is really a topic that both of you have really dug into a lot in your work, and something that I write about a bit in the book, but I would love to like learn from you guys while we're here. This idea of like decolonizing travel, which is something that we've been like reading about and hearing about for a little while now, but it's still something that's kind of like maybe hasn't hit like the major mainstream. But there's a lot of work happening, and I know Vinci, you guys are about to publish a free ebook on decolonizing travel from Rise Travel Institute. So I'd love to hear about that. And Gabby, I would love to hear about your work on decolonizing travel and how, like, what messages you're trying to, what you've seen in your travels, and, what's changing, what's not, and what messages you want to share with your followers about what they should know, or like how they should sort of think about these questions when they travel. So I don't know who would like to go. Who would like to go first? Or maybe Vinci. We haven't heard from you in a few minutes here.
Would you like to?
Oh yeah.
Just to make sure that we have recording. Thank you. Well, thank you for the question. Wow, this is a big topic.
Right. I'm like, where do we even start, actually?
Yeah. So we are just wrapping up the prep work for this ebook, which is 80 pages long. And so, like, to summarize what decolonizing travel means would be the toughest job of the day, I would say. But to put in the simplest term, tourism and travel is intrinsically colonial. If you look at the history of tourism, and the very fact that mass tourism thrives is because of global inequities. Like, wealthier people can go to the global south and enjoy services that are like much cheaper and take over, and therefore like the entire economy is based on that. Foreign investments see opportunities and they go in, take the land, and build resorts and so on. And also our mindset as travelers as well, like, we have this bucket list mindset, like, oh, we're gonna go there, and travel has always been mostly for the average traveler is mostly for ourselves, right? We want to look for things that is, in travel for us. We want to decompress because we deserve it, and we want to go like enjoy and spend money, that to buy services and an experience that you wouldn't otherwise be able to pay for, like in your home country, because it's too expensive, etc., etc. So I would say that decolonizing travel means that you remove yourself as a traveler from the center. Of course, like, in the experience of travel, we all get something from the experience. It's transformative, it's positive, especially if we reflect on our experience and we learn from it. I personally am really indebted to the privilege of being able to travel, right? And I wouldn't be who I am today without those experiences. But when we travel, we need to remember that we're going to other people's homes, and that those places are not our playgrounds, right? And so this is this mindset that we're trying to inspire and also make sure that when people, or like all of us, when we're traveling to another place, like, just be really mindful and thoughtful about the residents' needs, and like whether our actions and behaviors are intrusive, and how we can actually contribute in a way that gives back to the local communities and like help the places that we love so much thrive so that they continue to regenerate. So I guess that's a very brief answer to that. But we do have an ebook, 80 pages long, and it's going to be published this Saturday. And I encourage everyone to go to our website and download it. Well, end of plug. Thank you.
Just to react quickly, I love what you said about not putting yourself at the center, which was really in my own kind of reflection, especially about social media and how I post, really trying to think about decentering myself and my story when I'm posting about a place that I'm visiting. But of course, you've had much deeper thoughts on that topic than I have.
No, I love that. I really think that at the core of it, it is about removing yourself from the center of the conversation. And I understand why it's kind of not an easy mental shift for a lot of people, because I'm spending my money to go to Jamaica. Why am I not at the center of that conversation? Like, I want to go to the beach. I want to eat what I want to eat. I have a horrible job that overworks me in a capitalist society. Can I sit at the beach or no? Like, I kind of get that. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity to welcome people to say, like, it's really not putting you in danger of wasting your money or not having a good time or whatever, to decenter yourself. It's actually a great opportunity to build community, to think about life a different way than you ever would have been able to before. Like, that's what I love most about travel, is like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Jamaica, I'm gonna like spend an extra 10 minutes or an extra $100 staying at this resort that's locally owned, but then the grandma's gonna snatch me out of my room at dinner and be like, you're eating dinner with us. And I'm sitting at her table like, what is everybody saying? I don't understand patois. And I gotta learn patois a little bit. And like, yeah, it really opens you up. So I think there's a shift, and that's what decolonizing travel really to me is about, is traveling with intention, but also like, I mean, you mentioned this before, being okay with sitting with a little discomfort, or being okay with sitting with a little fear of the unknown, and realizing that like 9 times out of 10, that's gonna lead you to something better than you expected than not. And as like a story for that, I just came back from Kenya. I did a safari in Kenya, and on paper it's like, wow, yay, like Pinterest, yay, Instagram. But I went with a tour company, Intrepid Travel, that does really intentional cultural trips.
They won a lot of awards.
Yeah, they won a lot of awards. Yeah, and the award I won at the Bessie Awards one of them was with Intrepid Travel. So really love them. They do everything with intention. So I'm like, all right, like, let's talk. So we went to safari in Kenya, and we had like an all-black tour guide, like tour groups, like local tour guides. And we like didn't just go to the safari and like see a giraffe and take a picture with it. Bless you. We went to the Masai Mara and talked to like NGOs and really just got to know the local people. And it's not just like sitting there kind of interviewing them, like, tell me your struggles. Like, I want to know the worst parts about your life. It's really like cracking up at the table and telling stories about how their kids are like joking around at school just like my little sisters are. And that's kind of what it can be and feel like to talk to locals and have a good time with them, and not just, have an intense experience. Like, it can be really fun to decenter yourself in a conversation. But my point with that is that we went to the safari, and our tour guides we asked them, we said, hey, we are actually all Black and brown Americans. Like, every single one of us. There was not a white person in sight, to be honest, or Asian. Like, it was Black and brown, all of us. And we're like, have you ever had a tour group like this? Like, we're in Africa. Have you ever had just Desi and Black travelers? And they're like, no. 35 years of running tours. 35 years. And they're like the #1 tour company in Africa. And I'm like, you have not just had only Black people in Kenya? And Kenya has a deep like Desi history too, which is like Indian Pakistani. Have you ever had just Black and Desi? No. And we were young too, so they're like, yeah, our average age of people who can go on safari, who can afford the flight, who can afford the trip, are 65, 60. So they're like, yeah, you guys are like aliens to us.
Exceptional in many ways.
Yeah. And I mean, it was through this scholarship program. Like, I was an influencer, that's how I got to go. It was through the scholarship that like half of the people who went were through a scholarship on it with Intrepid Travel. So like, it was stars aligning that we even got to do that and be there. And decolonizing travel to me is like not having that be once in a lifetime. Can that be 3 times in a lifetime? Can that be once a year for like a group of people? Slowly like making that the norm.
Well, yeah, just to reflect and say, like, of course, I am one of Gabby's followers. And I saw when you were posting your content, and like, I think I knew you were going to Kenya because like we've been like exchanging some emails, like probably about this, and you were like, oh, I'm going to Kenya, and I used to live in Kenya, so it was like, oh yeah, she's going to Kenya, and I was like looking forward to your content, and when I saw like these videos of you in an all Black and brown, that was like it really struck me to see that. And as a white woman who lived in Kenya for 4 years, like, it was such a beautiful, I mean, sorry, that's like kind of trying to say, but like, it was just a really, it struck me how different that was from what I'd seen, and how wonderful it was to see that. And so thank you for doing that. And I hope like the fact of you sharing that will help all of us say like, okay, this isn't exceptional actually. Like let's make it 5-10 years from now. Let's be like, oh yeah.
Let's make it so obvious and boring.
And then like we're not even going to comment on that because obviously.
Right.
So anyway, thank you for that. So just a little reflection.
Yeah,
I would
thank you.
love to say something about your experience too. Like I just love this as a perfect example of what decolonizing travel also means, right? Isn't that telling that your group was the first group, like, you know, all.
Right, I'm like
I
2024.
mean, it was 2024, right, in Africa, and which means that, you know, in the history of mass travel, mass tourism, you know, those who had access to travel was like the more privileged, like, you know, white and more affluent people who get to, like, who have access to travel to, like, you know, faraway places like Kenya.
Right.
And so, like, now providing more access is also one of the very important decolonial work that we talk about, right? And so, and by the way, speaking of Intrepid, one of the directors, Matt Berner, actually just texted me before this event saying, like, we'll have a great event, it's such an important conversation, so congratulations. Yeah. Apparently you're on the radar.
You're on the radar, girl.
I
That's
interviewed them the New York Times, New York all of their press releases.
Right.
They're
And
aware of me.
the way that we're talking about Intrepid right now, like, plug for them, but they're not here. They're not paying us to talk about them. They're getting talked about because they're doing good work that impacts local people and like us, and like we like it. So, I mean, as an influencer, I'm like brands and companies and stuff, and even as consumers, it's like, now y'all are like, wait, who is Intrepid Travel? Like, let me look up their Instagram. Like, what are they doing? I hope that you guys now move forward and know that they get to do what they do because of people like you. Like, you go on their trips. You talk about them to your friends. You, like, when people say, hey, do you want to go on bigpartybus.com or Intrepid Travel? You're like, well, I know a little about Intrepid, so like, let's go with them. At least, like, you know, the dollars are going towards the local community. Like, you can say that. Like, I mean, we're up here, but you guys, ideal-wise, are the decision makers. So, like, that's why I'm an influencer. I have no influence if people don't care what I say or change their actions because of what I say. So, like, you have a lot of power as consumers.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna make sure that he sees this video, this recording.
Oh God.
And yeah, maybe that can just like open up a little bit of a conversation about, because I know you work at RISE, which is an institute that works with both individual travelers and people in the travel industry. And of course, you work with a lot of people in the travel industry. I mean, I think it's easy to kind of paint the tourism industry with a sort of like a single brush. But there are a lot of people doing interesting and innovative things like at the small scale, at the larger scale. So any like trends or like positive developments that you guys see that you would like to highlight, or any other like particular examples of, you know, whether in decolonizing travel or more broadly, that you want to highlight to people here?
Sure. Top of mind, I just think of kind of like grassroots apps. I have an app coming out, plug, at the end of the summer, which is just what I do now, which is like scholarships and grants for travel. I'm just making it an app. So I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that. I know other people are doing it. There's another creator, Martinique Lewis, who just came out with the Green Book Global app. So it's...
You want to talk about the Green Book?
Marty.
Yeah, Marty. Yeah, shout out to Marty. She co-founded the Black Travel Alliance with me, which is a nonprofit, and it's all about representation in travel. So Marty has a new app, the Green Book app, which if you know anything about American history, the Green Book, it's like, I'm Black, where can I go that's safe? And it's the travel version and it's the global version. So it's just that, and it's just that simple. It's an app. It's like, it's not like doing flips on your phone. It's not, it doesn't cost $1 billion. It's just that simple. But having that information in the community in one place is so powerful. I think people, or even companies, think they have to do these big grand gestures to be impactful or to decolonize travel or be intentional. It's just like, no, we just need to start and have that conversation start with that one tool, that one app. And already I see the Green Book app like blowing up around the world. So many people are adding, like when I was in Kenya, I was like, let me add this store to it because I'm here and I can do that. And so I see like the community rallying around it.
That's cool. I'm going to keep an eye out for
Yeah.
I do have several examples at the top of my mind. Since we are in New York City, Bobby and I, my friend, who we just spent an afternoon in Chinatown in New York City, and in Chinatown there is a walking tour company, like grassroots company called Moss Street Girls, and they're founded by two Chinese American girls leading walking tours in the area of Chinatown and really trying to connect young Chinese Americans, well, it doesn't have to be young, but Americans to the history of Chinese Americans and all the, segregation, immigration law and structural discriminations back in the days. And they also, so they call it MS, like Moss Street Girls, so the acronym is MSG. And so another thing is also what they're trying to do is to demystify the negative effect of MSG, and therefore also the stigma that Asian people carry, all over the world. And another one, Unseen Tours in the UK.
Yeah.
Right? And migrant tours. And so I'm talking about like all these walking tours that are not run by big companies, but by ethnic minorities, by the homeless population, by refugees, and through joining their walking tours, you get to, understand the city through their lens, and you get to hear stories that you would never otherwise hear or read about in other guidebooks, and that's amazing, and that's how, immigrants and refugees contribute to the fabric of a community. And so that's beautiful, right? And also, Etnica, I'm going to give them a shout out too. We have been partnering with them for 2 years. Etnica is a small independent social good company, a tour operator operating in Guatemala and Mexico by two wonderful individuals like Muriel, know them, and Sophia and Pablo. And so what is wonderful about them is that they would always connect travelers with the indigenous communities in these places, and you can see through how they interact with the local communities, they really care about them. It's like, their connection is like on a very personal and human level. It's not just like about business transaction. And so they're modeling that for the travelers, so that travelers, have a very different mind, can cultivate a very different mindset instead of thinking that they want to get anything from that, just to get things from their experience, but actually cultivate relationship. So I find that really beautiful.
Yeah.
So sort of, I love what you share about Unseen Tours.
Yeah.
Because, tours led by homeless people, and they're based in London, but I think they operate in other cities in the UK, and that kind of thing. I mean, one thing that when people ask me for sort of like concrete tips on like how to be a new tourist, or like how to kind of have this other new approach to travel, a really concrete thing I say is like hire a local tour guide and spend time with them. And if you can find someone who's a refugee or coming from a different sort of perspective of a place that you're visiting, all the better. So thank you for that. I think we are officially out of time.
Yeah.
Well,
we can
any
continue.
final thoughts from Gabby or Vinci?
I feel like my job as an influencer is to give people permission to do the things they actually care about and what they want to do. So my thing is like, if you want to go to Paris and do that, like that's cool. But like if you take the extra 10 minutes, 20 minutes, like sit with your family, think about what you actually care about, look at your life and realize like, I want to do the Eiffel Tower pic because it's cute and everyone will care about it, and like that's a connection point. I can post that and people will care. Or you can go do that thing on the second page of Google and to really like, maybe people know less about it. Maybe you have to talk to them more and explain like why you went there, and maybe it's less cool to them, but it's really cool to you. And so I think my whole thing with decolonizing travel and like why I post it all is like, do what's cool to you.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Don't adopt someone else's because you think you ought to.
Right. Make your own bucket list. Like life is short. Life is too short to be living someone else's bucket list for sure. So be confident enough, and this is my permission to everyone here today or whoever's watching on this video, to like live your own bucket list. And even if other people don't get it, and preferably one that like helps the world and doesn't take, it gives.
To piggyback on what you said, I love what you shared, and want to do, and there's always a better way or a more thoughtful way to do what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what I would say to conclude about how to decolonize travel is really to understand that this is a journey. No one is perfect. I hate when people call us experts because we are still all learning and unlearning. And, there are things that I used to do that I don't do anymore because I realize that that's harmful or that's not thoughtful enough. And so, you just continue to learn. And so there's no right or wrong, and there's no need to blame yourself or shame anyone else for doing what they do, but just invite people to join this journey of learning and unlearning. Paige.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I just want to say, I'll just wrap up and say thank you so much for joining me up here, guys. Thank you all for coming. I've really enjoyed this conversation about the book. Thank you to Painting Knitwear for hosting us. And thank you. I really hope, I wrote this book because I want to inspire people to have conversations on these topics and ask their own questions of themselves, of the companies they frequent, of their governments, of the narratives they encounter when they travel. So just the fact, I love that we got to, talk about the book a little bit at the beginning there, and then we got to have a sort of a broader conversation about, some of the topics that I touch on in the book. And I really hope that this is just the beginning of even more conversations about travel and tourism and the power of seeing the world. So thank you all for joining me, and
Buy this book. Buy the book. Thank
So
you.
we're going to start the signing portion of tonight's events. As I said, buy the book. It's over there. We'll be open for another half hour or so. Signing at this table here, right behind these three. The line will be at staff fix and wrap around to the back. Just give us a few minutes while we rearrange things. But yeah, just grab a book. If you didn't check in with my colleague Christopher, and please enjoy yourselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And just one last word before you go. What we Rise Travelers do actually is celebrating our 4th anniversary tonight, just one block down the road in a bar. And Paige and her family are also joining us. So I would love for you all to come and join us and continue the conversation and while having a drink. So the venue would be at DBA. So just DBA New York City, and you can look up the address. We actually booked a few tables on the terrace in that bar. So really hope that you can join us. Thank you.